Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He has worked for numerous companies, including the WWE, WWF, and WCW. Pleased to welcome the one, the only Casey Thompson to the show. Welcome, Casey, to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
I'm originally from Michigan, and then my we moved around a couple little states, Indiana, Illinois, then ended up down in Florida. And Florida is where I grew up, and where I fell in love with wrestling, and it's all downhill from there.
All right, so Midwest, moving down south to Florida, and Florida was a huge territory, with Gordon
Oh yeah,
Soley and all the names back in the day, Dusty Rhodes and so many guys.
oh yeah.
Who are some of your favorites growing up to watch?
Um, well, rewind a little bit. My parents were huge wrestling fans. They went to wrestling live events all the time in Michigan in the Sheik's territory. So, um, moving down to Florida, they of course they watch wrestling and they're watching the Madison Square Garden Network, watching the WW. It might have been WWF then,
Hmm.
and I was like, "Oh, this is crazy." I just went to my room, and then one day I was watching just TV. It was Saturday at noon. All of a sudden, Gordon Soley came on, and I seen Dusty Rhodes and Blackjack Mulligan and guys like that, and I was hooked. And so yeah, I mean, we went all the time. I ended up helping set up, and this was in Fort Myers, Florida. I helped setting up the ring at the live events with the ring guy Gordon Nelson, a former wrestler. And then at one point, Coach John Heath would send the posters to my house, mail them to my house, and I would poster the town for them. So I mean, technically, that's how I really got started. And then, but yeah, those just Florida wrestling impacted my life so much. Even Georgia Championship Wrestling, TBS 605. Saturdays is like noon and 605. It's like don't make no plans because we're going to be watching it. And my parents were on board, because they are huge wrestling fans always. So it was cool. I mean, my brother watched it, the whole family did. Like no talking during that time, and I would even watch like replays and stuff of it, like when the TV would be snowy and UHF and all that, and trying to watch it just to hear it and stuff like that. So I mean, once I seen Dusty and Gordon and Blackjack, I was hooked. That's I knew right then that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and so when you're hooked at a young age, you're watching these people, you're fascinated by these athletes, and the work that they're doing. Was there a point where you just were like, I have to try out for this. I have to go into this industry. I want to be a
Oh,
wrestler.
most definitely. I was, you know, what I told everyone I was going to do, what I wanted to do, and surprisingly, my parents were not like, uh, you know, they didn't oppose it at all. So actually, um, by this time I'm in high school, and I still had the dream of being a professional wrestler, and so there was um a flyer up for a wrestling, like a little independent outlaw wrestling event. So decided that, and then it said, become a professional wrestler. So I was like, oh, there's my chance. And I was like 15. I wasn't even old enough to drive, and my dad drove me to my first, wrestling lesson, and it was just all downhill from there.
And when you're training, I mean, it is intense. It's not like any other form of athleticism or sport that you're playing because it's a lot of work, physicality,
Yeah.
far cry from baseball, from basketball, from football. I mean, it's really, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I played all those sports. So, and I was young, I was in shape and everything. Um, I remember my first day, they had me taking a bump outside the ring on a mat, and I landed half on, half off the mat. And my elbow swelled up real big, and um, a lot of people that would deter and they'd run off, but I'm like, that was my dream, and this was my chance. And so I trained for a year. One of the old Florida guys, he wrestled Florida out in went down Owens territory in Oregon, Pacific Northwest, Mid Atlantic, Mid South. A guy named Golden Boy Jerry Gray. He trained me, and he has a bad rap. Some guy, when a lot of those old guys live like carnies and stuff like that. So he, but thankfully for me, he took the time, and I lived 2 blocks from him. He had a ring in his backyard too, along with training before the events and stuff like that. So he called me over and said, "Hey, come on over," and we wrestled for hours and hours and hours. So it paid off for me. Um, Living so close to him, and I actually trained for a year before I had my first match. Unlike nowadays, they train for 6 weeks and get out there, or they start training and they quit and say they're wrestlers and just tarnish the business.
Well, when you started training, were there any pieces of advice that you got from your trainers that applied to you throughout your career and still apply to you today?
Sure. um it's all about respect, paying your dues. you know they'll just say, go make sure you go up and shake everyone's hand when you get to the building. They also, we had a set up and tear down the ring, and we weren't even getting paid. If we were, it was, I remember the one time them saying, if you don't help tear down the ring, you're not getting any of the leftover hot dogs. So, but it is just how we were. It helped build character. It helped you, you weren't just in it for money. You were in it because of the love of the sport. So, and I took a grasp to it because I wanted to learn every aspect of the business, from the promotional side to the, setting up and tearing down, from A to Z. I wanted to know everything.
Yeah, and it's always good to know as much stuff as you can because there's a lot of different positions you can work in the business. It's not just being a competitor. There's commentators,
Right.
there's announcers, there's managers, there's the people behind the
Hmm.
scenes that work very, very hard to put on this production. So that's good that you took advantage of that and you went and did that. Um, Now, when you're making your debut, I'd imagine it's very nerve-wracking. Were you nervous, having any anxiety, or were you just going in there excited and happy and enjoying the ride?
Yeah, I was probably a little nervous, just, I was young. Um, Granted, it's not in front of a lot of people. So, it might have been 100, 150 people. But um, I was with the guy that's been around for a while, so I just, did what I was taught. Just, at that point, I would just shut up and listen. Just do what they told me. I think my biggest fear is be able to hear them when we talk to each other and communicate. So, but it was good. We got through it. It was fine, and just kept on plugging away.
Yeah, I mean, you've had so many opponents over the years you got to wrestle against and work. Who are some of your favorite people that you got to share the ring with?
Um, I mean, I've been in the ring with. I was fortunate. After the reason why I wanted to get in wrestling was because of Dusty and Blackjack and guys like that. And it ended up I became real close friends with Blackjack Mulligan, and I helped run his wrestling school he had, and he became a mentor. And so, you talk about going full circle, meeting your heroes and stuff like that, and he couldn't be, any greater. So he taught me a lot, and then I was friends with Kevin Sullivan. So Kevin, he was a booker at WCW for a long time, and he made sure I was up there, took care of me and stuff like that. So, but as of for TV matches, I wrestled Alex Wright a lot. We were both young, so it was good because very competitive matches. I have 50% of it. I wrestled him. I wrestled Chavo. I wrestled pretty much everybody. Um, but I did wrestle Blackjack's last match ever. So that was something I look back at and stuff like that. So um, I I think some of my favorites are probably some of the old Florida guys. I wrestled Barry Windham, which probably the most underrated wrestler of all times. You know, Probably one of the greatest wrestlers of all times. Wrestled Barry. I wrestled Mike Graham. I'm probably one of the few people that's wrestled all the Armstrong brothers plus the father. Because they used to have shows up in Alabama and they bring me in all the time. And I remember the one time I had to come in and I'm wrestling the Bullet, Bob Armstrong. And
Hmm.
he's like, "Oh, hey, Casey." I went to the hotel to meet the guys, hanging out and everything. And he's like, "Hey, Casey, a pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. Please don't hurt me tonight." I'm like, "Don't worry about it." I wrestled really stiff and snug, just the way I was brought in. Some guys are light as a feather. I laid everything in to try to make it believable. Um, and so he's like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" I'm like, I said, "Let's just start off slow and taper down from there." He's like, "All right, sounds good to me." And believe it or not, we had a great match. People were wanting to kill me afterwards, and so I've had the opportunity to be in there with a lot of I guess a lot of them are legends now, but they were legends to me then. You know, People that I grew up idolizing and got to share the ring with. Dusty, guys like that. So it's I have no complaints on what I did in wrestling.
It's so cool that you got to share the ring and be around so many people. Dusty Rhodes, how influential was he? Really cared about nurturing and fostering young talent to become successful in the business, and his sons have gone on to do great things. But Barry Windham, Mike Graham, those are two great legends as well that you got to be with.
Yeah.
What were they like to be around backstage?
Mike was really, really cool. I became really close with him up until he passed. And Barry's quiet. He's cool. I spent um, before Jack died, I went out to his place out there, his ranch, and I spent like 5 or 6 hours with him, just sitting on the porch talking. He's like, "Hey, do me a favor, go in the house and get Barry out." Barry was going through a little bit of depression at the time and wasn't coming out of his room, so I just pounded on his door until he came out, and he sat out there. One of my friends came with me, Jack, and Barry, and just sat there and just talked for hours and hours. And Barry's very engaging, talked the whole time, just like we're talking here.
It's always good,
So,
to have that bond, that camaraderie, because as you're in the industry, you meet so many people. Um, you remember those
mhm.
times. Really,
Oh yeah,
those are good memories.
yeah. I remember the first time I worked Rocky Johnson.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, The Rock's dad, Rocky
yeah.
Johnson.
I became friends with him. Was with him all the time, and having dinner every night with his the Rock's mom. And it's just it's crazy when I look back and I think about the stuff I've done. And yeah, was I a household name or a main eventer? No, but just having a main event by itself is not going to make a show. You have to have the whole package. So I was part of it. I had an intricate role. I did my job. I did it well, and I was involved on TV for many years. You know.
There's nothing like being in front of a live audience. That is like the lifeblood of pro wrestling, and having that
Oh yeah.
exposure as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a unique lifestyle, so I got to experience it, for a long time.
I want to switch gears and talk about some of the stuff you've done outside of the business. I know you've done a lot of charity work and have been involved with a lot of different organizations. What kinds of things have you
Yeah.
done outside of the business to help out in your community?
Um, quite a few things. I had a wrestling promotion for a long time. Um, and we always would do, my mother passed away from cancer. So
I'm so
I
sorry.
was always very involved in the American Cancer Society. Did a lot of events that just would be just to benefit them. All the boys came in, knew that it was, for a good cause. And, it's amazing how many guys you can get, together that don't care about their payday or anything when they know that it's legitimately going to a good cause. There's a lot of scammers out there that, bad actors that, say that it's for this or that, but it's actually for them to pay their bills, you know. But American Cancer Society, anything with animals, comes close. My dog I have right now is a rescue. And it's trickled down with my son. He's and my daughter. She's a sophomore at Georgia Southern University. She works got involved with dogs, with working with working dogs, training them from puppies. And then my son, he wrestled Division I in college. Now he's about to finish the police academy in a couple weeks, top of his class, and
Congratulations.
he has a foster dog. So not only me, but it trickles down into what I taught them. I was real. I was kind of different. They were always compassionate, and you see people on the side of the road, they'd always want to try to give them money. And I would say, and I know it's kind of harsh. I'm like, no. I said, we're not going to give them money. I said because a lot of them are just scammers and stuff like that. I said, but what we do is if our friends need help, we're there for our friends. People we know and people we love, we always take care of, and we've always done that. Been there for all of our friends, and being a wrestling, it's a wide. I have a lot of friends, so I mean, I've done a lot of shows to help people out, and when they're down on their luck or whatever, and I would still do it to this day. A lot of stuff with through the church with coaching. Um, when the kids were younger, I did a lot of coaching indoor soccer and basketball, and I did a lot of benefit shows to help them. And they're wrestling. My son started wrestling at 5 years old, all the way through college. So um, a lot of fundraisers for his teams and stuff like that. So it's it'd be like Russell. Okay, we got a fundraiser. It's just part of the way we grew up, just giving back. You give back to who gives to you. It's a circle of life.
Was there like a particular moment, whether it was a fundraiser or an organization that you were helping out, like the American Cancer Society, or just any kind of act of kindness that you were doing that meant so much, and was very heartwarming to you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the acts of kindness we don't do to be recognized. We do because that's what we do, how we were raised, how we brought up, how I raised my kids. But to answer your question, definitely the American Cancer Society. I was very close with my mom. My mom passed right before my son was born, so she never got to see him and meet him. So that definitely, and they do good things. So we would do events, a couple times a year just to and give them all the money. And we had auctions and stuff like that to even raise more money. I had one of the matches I promoted. I had Dusty Rhodes versus Barry Windham in a Texas bull rope match. So I auctioned off they both signed the cowbell. And so we auctioned that off, auctioned off pictures of Dusty. I made a call to all the guys, um, and everyone sent me promo shots to have, autographed to auction off and everything. So we'd have a big auction every year. It was a lot of fun. We did it out at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, and just had a big crowd. Everything was free, just donations, and so we would always do that. And then our wrestling group would add more money to it, and round it up, make it nice. So we'd always do that. That one always meant something to me because I felt like my mom was looking down with a smile on her face.
Yeah, it's always good to help those that are going through a hard time in their life and supporting causes that mean a lot to you um, over the years. What is it about giving back that gives you the most joy?
It's like Christmas. Um, it seems like as you get older, it's more fun to just buy for people than it is to receive. So that's it's just fun to be able to help someone to brighten up their day and not expect anything in return. Just to do it because you know what, it's a friend of mine. They need help, and I was glad I was there to help them.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Let's talk about your podcast. I was checking that out. It's called In Ring Wrestling Podcast that you do
Yeah.
with former WWE announcer Kevin Kelly. How did you get involved with that? What made you want to start up the podcast?
Um, I was sitting there and I'm like, there's so many podcasts out there with wrestling, but wrestling's a big demographic. I haven't been involved in a few years, um, but I have no desire to ever get in the ring, take a bump again. But I'm like, there's something I could do, So I was talking to Kevin one day. I'm like, Kevin, I said, let me pitch something to you and tell me what you think. I said, I want to do a podcast that, um, couple things. I want it from the enhancement guy's perspective because you might have, say, how I explained it to him, Sting, he might treat Luger one way, he might treat me another way. But you never hear those things because, not it seems like there's a surge going around right now where the enhancement guys they're doing a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. Um, I've been doing a lot of podcasts before Kevin Sullivan. I called him and I said, Kevin, let me ask you a question. I said, I've been doing a lot of podcasts lately. I said, is it because everyone's dying? He's like, no. He said, you know what it is, Case? He says, you were there during the most important times in wrestling, through the Monday Night Wars. He says, you have a perspective of what happened. He's like, so they want to hear your perspective. They've heard everyone else. How many times are they going to interview me, do a podcast and tell them about my perspective? Now they have a fresh perspective of you. So I told Kevin Kelly, I said, Kevin, I said, I want to do a podcast with a perspective of um, the enhancement guy. That comes from, if you don't know anything about the wrestling, and I like to tell a lot of behind the scenes stuff because I think that's what people always want to know. When you go to a concert, everyone wants a full access pass, right? When you go, you always want to know, like when Howard Stern would be on and they would start talking about stuff behind the scenes or showing stuff, and you're like, stop that. No one wants to know about that. Yes, they do. That's what they want to know about. Everyone wants to know the forbidden truth of everything, right? So I said, you were in WWF. Well, actually, first I was asking him, I said, can you have a young kid that I can do a podcast, but I need someone to keep the flow going. And he's like, you know what? I like your concept. And he says, I would actually like to do it. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I said, okay. I said, that's even better. Kevin's great. And the way the name came up, so you look at the format sheets, it's all formatted with the time codes and everything. Then it's a M&E music and entrance, say Lex Luger verse, and they have a big, it's a in ring and then a big line where they just write someone's name in, and that would be the enhancement guy. And in ring means you walk down when the referee goes down, for the next match. And so you don't get a music and entrance. You're already in ring. So that's where the name came from, In Ring Wrestling Podcast. So it's a little behind the scenes kind of thing. So we get together and we just do 30 minutes every week, and we just talk about everything intertwines with the two of us. He was there in WWF. I was in WCW. We've been talking about the Monday Night Wars behind the scenes. We've been talking about different encounters I've had with different wrestlers, and he gave a big explanation about Vince McMahon and pronouns. And so, I mean, we have a unique perspective that I think that most people don't have. So we have the opportunity to get it out there and present it to everyone. And we do it in a 30-minute format. We're in and out. It's like a couple quick stories and we're out. And I have people contact us and they're like, man, that went by so fast. We're like, can't wait for next week. So it's been going well. It's growing. It's a process. It's going to be take a little time. But we know it's a marathon and not a sprint, so we're in for the long haul. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It's at In Ring Wrestling Podcast. So it's we have a lot of fun doing it. Like to have the fan interaction, questions, stuff like that. We're up for all of it.
And do you keep up with the current product at all today? Do you still follow wrestling today?
Yes, some. Not. I don't watch it on a regular basis. I have a lot of friends in both groups and stuff like that. So yeah, I see bits and pieces here and there. The more and more we do the podcast, the more and more I'll watch a little bit here and there.
Anybody that, catches your eye that's like, man, I really like what this person's doing?
WWE has a lot of guys, you know. Um, AEW, um, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around it. I wish them all the best luck. They're locked in for a couple years with the um, being on Max and everything, but um, it's just not my style. I like to tell a story. I don't like to do a million finish moves in the first match. But they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of guys that look good. So hopefully they can get some stuff corrected and start building the numbers back up and stuff like that. But one of my friends, Billy Gunn's there. We started together. His wife is one of my best friends from a long time before you know we knew him or anything. Um, so we keep in contact. Jerry Lynn is one of their producers or coaches. I used to room with him in WCW when we were on the road. WWF, WWE. A lot of guys I know up there. So it's I do watch it some, but not not as much. You know, but I wish them all the best luck, and you know, this wrestling it just keeps evolving, reinventing itself.
It absolutely is, and hopefully it continues to prosper. We're in a very hot period right now. We're seeing so many different companies and alternatives, and from this point, I hope it continues to grow as we're talking
Oh
here
yeah,
about the business. I hope it continues to evolve and prospers into the future because we need more content out there. We had two companies at one point. Now we got three companies at one point, and now we got a lot of different places where people can work. So I'm excited
yeah,
for the future of the business. I think it's going to be a great, great year coming up and beyond. So I'm looking
yeah.
forward
It
to
all
it.
comes in cycles, so I think it's back on an upswing again.
Hmm. Well, Casey, this has been wonderful getting the chance to talk with you about your
Oh, you too.
career and the stuff that you've done outside of the business to help out with the community and everything. I just want to say thank you so much for coming onto the show. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. You would plug your podcast again if you want to once again remind people where they can check your podcast out and any social media that you're on. Feel free to promote it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. In Ring Wrestling Podcast. And same thing for um, all the social media outlets. Everything's In Ring Wrestling Podcast from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok. So, we're out there putting content up and, just trying to send our perspective from our time in wrestling.
All right. Well, Casey,
So,
thanks.
but I appreciate it, man. I really, it's been an honor to be on your show today, and you're doing good work, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate it again for you to come on, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Oh, thank you. Next time I'll try to get Kevin to come with me.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right.
Not a
Have a
problem.
wonderful day. Take care.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.